Hello everyone, my name is Ryan and welcome to a new video. Today we'll be going over a live game that I played against Tim Song in the recent 2019 US Go Congress. The tournament is the AGA Pandanet City League, which is a league tournament played online during the season, and the two top teams are then selected to play face-to-face for first place at the US Go Congress. So I was playing board 1 and my opponent was Tim Song. I really like this the format of the City League because it's a league format, but the finals you actually get to play face to face. So really gives you an urge to or motivation to actually make the finals. And of course we have an awesome tournament director, Steve Coburn, and also, arguably, in my opinion, the best game recorder, Dennis Wheeler, who is always there for the finals. So, very interesting tournament. So my opponent is Tim Song. I've actually met him in 2014, also during the Go Congress. At that time, it was our first game, and I played him in the Masters. A very, very calm and tough opponent. Although he's actually known for his two-space jumps, like he used to make a lot of two-space jumps on the Go board, and we would make fun of him sometimes over beer. So that's kind of just his style. I mean, he used to be a very center-oriented player, so he likes to take center control and play very influential games. So, without further ado, let's get right into the game. So I was playing black, and to start, I played this opening again. So, it's been a while since I've played any serious games, and I didn't really have the time to study any openings, so what I did was, just go back to something I knew. And this is an opening that I played quite a few times. You'll probably know if you've seen some of my casual game series. I play this quite a bit. So, white approached and attached, so this is one of the new ways to deal with it. Now, in the game I chose to descend directly. So this move is actually interesting because normally black would Atari and then descend. So this variation, if white cuts, then black would turn and then capture the stone back, and then white would extend. So the subtle difference between extending immediately is that if black extends and white connects, then black will turn. So now when white cuts and jumps, it reverts back. So you might be wondering, if they're exactly the same, why would you descend directly? So the difference is that if black plays here immediately, white can also extend and hane and then push 3 times. So white might not exchange this. And without cutting, when white plays here, black pretty much has to play the tiger's mouth. But if this is already finished, then it is possible that black does not answer on this side. So there's a slight difference because white doesn't have to cut. But if black descends directly and then when white connects, white pretty much has to cut when following up locally. But the bad side about descending directly is that white doesn't have to respond and there's not really a good follow-up. So in the game, Tim decided to attach, which is a pretty big move. And then we quickly played out this kind of AlphaGo Joseki. So nothing too interesting here. So I was thinking maybe I would play the tiger's mouth, but I kind of didn't want him to come back here because the top right is a relatively light shape. So black is stronger locally here, but the loss in territory is pretty large. So I didn't want to play this Joseki here. So yeah, in the game I just played the Atari. So after the Atari, the connecting is pretty much a must, because if black descends down, the direction, it's kind of awkward because nothing is exchanged there. So if white just connects out, this the distance here is awkward, because if white just escapes, it's hard for black to capture this in one move. So no matter what black plays, there's always some kind of light play and some invasions later. So I felt this would be awkward. So I just decided, let's just play an endgame. Let's play a slower game. I just wanted to take it slower. So I guess this AlphaGo Joseki variation is pretty standard, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. Later, when black cuts, white can play here directly, and then black has a chance to capture this in the future. But this is pretty much endgame because white is also very strong. Black is also very strong. So it's pure endgame, and we usually leave it out until later. So there's also a bit of agi if black extends. There's a little bit of agi on this side. But of course, black wouldn't do that anytime soon. So then, okay, we just keep playing the opening. So in this type of game, it's probably going to be an end game. I thought would be an end game kind of game. White played the 2-space high pincer, which is a bit surprising, and I was surprised by this. And after the game, I asked him, and he said that he actually wanted to play the 1-space high pincer, but then in the game, right before he played, he decided to play the 2-space. And then we went through a couple variations, and it seems that probably it's better for white to play this. So first, for this move, it's going to be less ideal for black to come out this way, because of course there's going to be this cut, and this stone is in a very good position for white. So if black chooses the fighting variation here, this white stone is in a very good position because it's peeping at the cut. So black would have a lot of weakness. So for example, white could extend a few times and then cut. And sometimes it's fightable, but in this case it's probably not good. And this direction is average. There's not much potential on this side anymore after the variation in the lower right. So it's not good for black to fight in this case. So in the game, or I mean, if white played here, black would probably attach and cut. And since white doesn't have the ladder, white can't really choose this variation because white can't ladder this stone. White can extend. So this is not a good variation for white, so white has to extend. And then we will play this probably something like this. So black gets gote, but a pretty big corner. White gets a lot of influence and a decent amount of territory. So this should be a pretty even result as well. Yeah, so actually the old Joseki goes like this. This is a good example of some of the older books in Go that aren't really correct. And I think the variation goes something like this. Black would jump after, but this is a very bad way to protect, because later when white jumps here, the corner is not even completely dead. So basically, this is a very, very bad choice for black. So something to note if you were to play this variation out yourself. This is actually incorrect in the books. So if white extends, black will just I think you would have to actually go back and fix. But then white would be very thick, so instead you might have to just Atari twice, and then Tanuki after. So I think that's one of the variations, but I'm not entirely sure here. But anyway, so if we go back to the actual game, of course black will play this move, and then everything is pretty much forcing moves. And then in the game, white chose to jump. So actually, I expected him to extend, because since the right side doesn't have that much potential, like black only has maybe 10-15 points here. So I thought this might be a better way for white to fight. But none of these variations are really set. It's always very complicated, and it will depend on how the fights play out. So, actually, none of us are really sure what's going on. And to my knowledge, it's still, there isn't a accepted variation. So, it's still unclear what the best moves for both players are. So this is still one of the kind of unsettled questions in Go. So if you could solve this variation, you can be famous. So here, I think black should have played something on this side. So in the game, I chose to extend because I was actually kind of afraid that white might just push through. Because actually, in this case, if black pushes through, then white might be able to hane. So if white can extend a few times, force black to keep responding. Well, I mean, like if we do something like that, then white might be able to push through. Maybe it was just a worry, but something like this happens, then black's direction is very, very bad. So I didn't really want to let this happen. So I thought this was sente, but I guess it turns out that it wasn't, because white could actually cut. And it seems that this variation is kind of dangerous for black. So the key thing is, if black can't capture this group, if there's still a ko, then white is acceptable, because if there's still a ko here, white gains quite a bit on the outside, so this would be a good result for white. So what I expected was him to connect, actually. So, because I thought these two were obvious exchanges, but I guess I didn't really think about white cutting at all. So in the game, actually Tim played here, and this was this was a surprising move, because we can see immediately that black can push out, and then after this, white's outside is kind of destroyed. So I'm not sure what he was thinking here. So of course he should have played the connecting move. And again, it's hard for black to capture this group very easily. So there's nothing. So it's kind of a hard card for black. So you can't capture this white group very easy, because this group actually has a lot of liberties. So, for example, the clamp is sente, and also the hane is sente. So it's got so much liberties, and if this ends up in a ko, this is probably going to be a good result for white. But the main point is that white should connect, and in the game, after black pushed out, it actually ended up being a very good game for white, because if white blocked, then black can push an Atari, and this shape just seems very bad for white. So in the game, white played here instead, but then this allowed black to push right through, straight through, right in between this knight's move. So at this point, black is actually very happy. And also, black also get this exchange, which forced white to protect inside. So even if white exchanges this, it's still gote because locally this is a dead shape. So it's one of those famous life and death shapes where if white blocks, then black could push, and then there's no way for white to live because after this Atari, there wouldn't be enough eye space. So if white had to live anyway, then making this exchange early doesn't really help. So white played here, then when black jumped, white played a nice move. So the main point here is that after this exchange, black can actually play here any time, and these stones are actually in attack. So even though it seems white could cut, after black extends, this shape is very weak. So, and also black has some stones on the right side as well. So this is pretty much a weak group in any time, which is very uncomfortable for white. So black gained on both sides. And so at this point, we can see that the game is going very well for black already. So then black approached. Now, this is actually probably not the best move, because after white pincers, I couldn't find a good follow-up, surprisingly. Normally, you could invade, but at this point, white wouldn't extend. White would probably hane. And now this is very uncomfortable because no matter when black hanes, white will cut. So it's very uncomfortable. But if black just extends, then white has a very nice wall to use to develop on the right side. So this is obviously not a good result. And also it's very uncomfortable to connect back because white can wedge in sente. So this is not good at all. So I couldn't really find a good result. And if black hanes immediately, white can turn. So this is also uncomfortable because after white plays here, later when white plays the tiger's nose, this is actually quite big. So yeah, it was very uncomfortable, and I spent quite a long time at this point. And after I thought about it a little bit, it's probably just better to fight this or invade in the 3-3 point immediately. Because if we can see if white does this right now, black would obviously not pincer in exchange with white pincer. So this is a very bad exchange for black. So after thinking a bit, I already played this out, so I decided to attach. So I attached and double haned like the knight's move Joseki. But in this case, white doesn't want to do this because black can capture this stone. And this would be much better for black because, for one, white probably needs another move here to prevent black from coming out to the center. Very bad agi. And even if white spends... So basically white, it's gote. And the corner is much more comfortable for black. So I think this is much more acceptable for black. So in the game, white chose to connect directly. And at this point, if black plays here, it's again very, very uncomfortable. But white can probably Atari first. And if black sacrifices this, there's not really a good place to play. Because when white captures, this group is still under attack. So it's uncomfortable. Black pincers, white just plays out, and these white stones are actually becoming very useful. So very, very uncomfortable again. And then if black connects, then when white hanes, again, it's one of those shapes where this stone is actually in a very good position. Because if white attached, then white can wedge, and then black has to Atari under. So, yeah, white has too much influence, and locally it's very bad. But I don't think I can play this move in a real game. So, it's just, yeah, I don't know. Might be okay, but black didn't get either side, and probably has to spend another move to live. So again, not very efficient shape. So in the game I decided, what, let's just play this ko, because it seems not too heavy. Because in order for white to finish the ko, white has to connect. And the corner shape is pretty much, so what kind of shape is it? Oh, it's pretty much like this. So it's pretty much equivalent to black Tanuki. White played here, then black Hane throws in Atari and white connected. And then this exchange is slightly better for black. So I guess it's acceptable. Not very good exchanges for black, but it's not super efficient if white wins the ko. But on the other hand, if black won the ko, it's actually very efficient for black, because we can see after this, if black won the ko, all of these stones are actually quite weak. This stone will get attacked, and also these 3 stones on the left, there's probably invasions, or at least there's some forcing moves above. So everything becomes very small, and black gains quite a large chunk of influence. And because this is the last area for white to gain territory, white has to gain a lot somewhere else in order to let this happen. So basically white is very heavy, but the problem is white actually has a lot of ko threats. So that's something that I kind of missed during the game, and we can see. So actually this is a very comfortable ko threat. Then black takes, and then obviously white wouldn't Atari that way. It's a very bad move. White played here, so this is actually at a loss, because after black connects, it's going to lose some points. And then this was actually a mistake, because white can actually descend, and the next move here is actually gote, because after this clamp, there's nothing black can do. So it's actually a 1,000-year ko, and right now this move is way too small. The main problem here is that after white descended, white can actually play something like this, or so later if white connects this stone back, black is not alive locally. So white could probably just connect, or maybe waste another of black's ko threats and then connect this back, because if black captures, then this group is actually dead, because there's actually no way to live, and with the outside is sealed, then black is in big trouble. So there's actually no way to live here, and so that's going to be a big problem, because all of a sudden all of these moves are going to be ko threats, right? If black fights this, then it's unclear whether something will come out of it, right? And also this group is not alive yet, so there's a lot to worry about, and white could potentially use this to win over the ko. So actually this might not work, but maybe white can just defend this, because this is definitely worth a move. And if black lives, then white could capture back. So I think this would be better than the game for white. And also there's more ko threats inside. So in the game, white decided to answer immediately. So I actually kind of got away with this, and so that actually worked out to be a ko threat. So white pushed, and then black Hane. So we're just both actually just kind of fighting ko threats, and then white connected. Now this is very uncomfortable for black in the game, because this is a move that white would play anyway, and actually turns out to be a ko threat, because if white does this, the corner becomes super small, and this stone isn't very attackable anymore because the corner is already reduced. So I didn't want this to happen, and white would catch up a lot in terms of territory. So I decided to answer this. Then cutting is another co-threat, and then white cuts, and then now black is out of co-threat, so black played the knight's move, and then large knight's move to attack this group. So black is still feeling very good, because although white won this ko, if black ever takes sente, black can still kosumi this out, and white just it's a limited amount of benefit for white. So black is still doing. If black can escape, then black has a lot more territory than white. So yeah, this is still looking good for white. Sorry, looking good for black. So now we can see white played the next couple of moves for white is very good. So first white Atari'd. And now this looks like a strange move, but it actually forces black to sacrifice these stones. Because black obviously has to spend another move, but now you can see that white has already captured the 4 stones. So already white gained territory from this exchange, and also not to mention white has another Hane move. So this is a pretty interesting Tsuji here. After black cuts, white has this Tsuji. So after black is forced to extend, white attached here. Now this is a kind of confusing move, because it seems that like white should be trying to save these, right? But white actually has a master plan that's actually worked out quite well in the end. So after extending and cut, black has a dilemma, because for one, black can't capture these 2 stones. So if black can't do that, then black has to play a move on this side, because this stone cannot get captured. But after doing that, white can Atari and extend. And this is actually what white is trying to get. White is actually trying to get the center. So after this, the game has actually become a lot closer, because we can see black actually captured a lot of territory. So this is 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and then plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Probably a few more. So like 25 points in here. But white gets this influence in sente, and if white can enclose a big part of this territory, then white would be able to catch up. So this is actually a very nice play by white. When you're behind, it's a good strategy to develop influence and play moyo, because then there's a lot of potential to gain big territories to catch up to your opponent when you're behind. So a very good strategy here. And here we're about to get to the main interesting parts of the game. So in the game, white jumped, and I think this move should have Atari'd, because if black extends, although it's a little uncomfortable, right? It's not that big of a corner, but the main thing is white has some forcing moves here, and this could be key to defending this moyo on the left. We can see this is almost a big. You can almost put your palm on it for a real board. So it's very big, but it's hard for white to make it territory. So if there's a few forcing moves, it might be easier for white to somehow enclose this. So this is the decider of the game right now. And a big question for white is whether this can be enclosed and how far black can push in. But after white exchanged this jump, there's no weaknesses anymore for black. So we can see black has a huge territory on this side and a big corner here. And all white has is potential here, and only about 15 points on the other parts of the board. So basically white needs to get this to make as much territory here as black's territory on this side, which you can probably tell it's Not an easy task. So white played the large knights, and then I decided to invade. So at this point, we were both in Byo-Yomi, and it's, you know, it's kind of nerve-wracking. You know, it's we're in the last game. I wasn't sure whether my teammates won. So at this point, their game's actually finished already, but I wasn't sure. So I basically I was ahead, but I had to, you know, finish this game. So I was kind of nervous at that point, and we were both in Byo-Yomi playing one move every 25 seconds, pretty much. It's 30-second Byo-Yomi, but you have to give yourself some time to press the clock and stuff. So yeah, so basically I was kind of just estimating how much white has to make, and I remember it was around 55 to 58 points. So if I can limit white to less than that, then black would be ahead. So basically was thinking that this whole time is to try to limit white to less than that amount of territory. So this is Sente. This is actually a Sente move. And then Kosumi, I was actually aiming at this move, but this actually ended up being a mistake because it actually doesn't work, because white can actually turn. And so if white had to Kosumi, then this would be very good for black, because all black has to do is just push this out and then jump. And then that's it, because white doesn't have 55 points here. So this would be pretty comfortable endgame for black after this point. So, but unfortunately, white could play this turn immediately, and then black is in trouble, because if black just jumps, then after connecting back, white could just Hane this and capture the center at any point. So basically, white played the large knights move and enclosed everything from on the left side. So these invasions didn't do very well at all. And then if black protects, then this side would be very dangerous, because actually white can Atari and connect. And this is a tricky move, because it actually threatens to... If black extends, there's a cut. So black has to fill the liberty. But black can't do that now, because after the towering, there's a ladder now. So actually extending is Sente, or black would have to sacrifice the center 2 stones, which would also be very, very big. So that's also a big concern. So white can turn, and there's not really anything black can do. If black turns, white can just extend. So yeah, again, there's nothing else to do. So at this point, I was a little bit panicking, but luckily, white is relatively weak, so black can still play the tiger's mouth, because there's still a lot of weaknesses here. So in game, white Atari'd, and pushed. So here I really made a big mistake. So black should have Atari here first and ask what white wanted to do. If white extends, then black can come out, because later when black captures, there's potential to make eyes. So, of course, the normal move for white would be to be extending. But now black can actually just sacrifice the left side. And now if white Ataris, black can Atari and connect. So this is actually this is going to be enough. If white just protects this and black captures, this would be enough, because there's not even if this is 55, black also gained more than 10 points on the side, so black would definitely win now. But unfortunately, after I played this time Suji move, which is almost a losing move, this wouldn't work anymore, because obviously this isn't Sente, right? White could just Tara here. And if everything dies inside, of course in 30 seconds I wasn't able to read whether this can live. And it just seems, you know, it seems pretty dangerous. White is very strong on the outside, or if white just connects and then Hanes, it's probably not easy to live inside. So yeah, at this point I didn't get that. And if I exchange this first, then obviously white would just extend now, and then everything would be dead. So at this point, black has to connect. But luckily, black was able to get this exchange later. But now, at this point, since white got this push, there's no other choice. Black has to connect this back. Then white Ataris. And then Hanes. Because actually, if white plays on this side right now, so this connection move is still Sente. But unfortunately, black, when white cuts, it's actually Gote, because if white comes back, this actually gets laddered. So I was very lucky, very, very lucky at this point. So things just kind of just worked out. So yeah, that doesn't really work either. And it's the same kind of deal like this, because black can, well, this cut wouldn't work anymore because black can just ladder. So nothing really is going in white's favor right now. So in the game, white Atari'd and then Hane this back. This is a huge move because whenever black extends, even if white could capture everything here, for example, if white jumps, but like for example, if white jumps, and if black gets this side, this is also very, very big. So even like this, white wouldn't have enough. So yeah, at this point, black is still quite ahead. Okay, so another time move. And then I wanted to get a little bit more benefit. Now, it doesn't affect the outcome of the game, but basically, if black protects here, there's still a cut, but there's still a cut here because then black has to Atari, and then white could still cut. But because this side is actually short on liberties, it's hard for white to capture black. So you can see, for example, if white turns, black can Hane, and these zones are just too short on liberties, and there's not really any cuts. The knight's move, doesn't work either because after pushing, both of these Ataris are Sente, so then black could just Hane and then attach. So none of these are really working variations for white. So I got kind of lucky there. So I Hane'd first, and then he cut here. So first I Atari here first. So during all of this time, white just really had this shortage issue. And if white Atari'd now, then this Kosumi would be Sente because it would threaten the wedge. So then black can play here right now and connect back. Or simply black can just wedge immediately. If white plays here, black can then come back. Because whenever white Ataris, black can make this Atari and then connect back. So basically, black just needs to connect this big group, and then extending here and getting this would be Miai. So then black would still win the game. So quite a lot to think about in 30 seconds. So after extending, I was quite confident I would win, because now if white captures this, black would come back here, and then again getting inside here is probably just as big as this middle group. So or maybe it's similar, yeah, because now white has to play here, and then you can see all of the territory on the inside here is also gone. So yeah, so at this point, after white played there, black comes back to connect. And now, even though white can capture this, that's still not enough because black got in the center. So right now, it's pretty much done because we can see black has 10, 14, 15, 16. 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. And then 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48. So only about 50 points, just shy of 50. And black also gained a few more here. So at this point, black is ahead by 10 to 15 points. And then at this point, black gets the endgame Incente. So then the difference in territory is going to be more and more. So this is actually my psychological in-game moves, because this is so uncomfortable, because white has to fix again, and then black could jump in Incente, and this just it's such a comfortable reduction, and then black could connect and then come back. This is very big. This is reverse Sente 10 points. So that would be it. So really, this game, black was clearly reading, but black didn't pick the right variation, because after white gained the wall, the game is actually quite uncertain, and if white played this variation out, I think the game would be at least very close, maybe 60-40. I think black would still be slightly ahead, but definitely the lead would be hard to keep. So really, what the main thing is, black shouldn't have captured this, and black probably should have just extended out and let white connect out, because if black can just keep all the territory and then get this out, then this would still be a very comfortable lead. So yeah, sometimes territory isn't everything, and when you're leading, it's really important to make sure your groups are strong, so that your opponent doesn't have a huge moils and you have to invade. Because when you invade, things get very complicated, and it's hard to make sure that things live, right? Because now you're giving your opponent the chance, really. So winning this game, New York team won 3-0. So another very, very clear win. So we were very happy with that, and it was a very nice game. So I really liked play with Tim, because he's very polite and he's a very nice guy. And so when we're reviewing, I also learn a lot of his thoughts, and I can learn a lot also. So I really enjoyed playing this game. So, alright, so thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next video. Give me a like, and I will see you next time.